This is a difficult gospel to preach on because it calls us into self-examination. One of the people that I have been reading lately is a man by the name of John Shea. He's a theologian, and he writes a little bit on this. And his opening paragraph on this particular gospel was very interesting. And I just read it to you. It is sad to see that those who stand for righteousness usually end up on the dung heap. There is an example of this, he says. A cop reports another cop for abusing a prisoner. He is summoned, and he is downgraded by the rest of his fellow men, even to the point of violence. A woman reports an accounting abuse in a corporation. Her boss thanks her for being so courageous and sends her on her way. But a week later, she is downsized and left alone. It even happens in our church as such. A priest reports another priest for child abuse. The bishop tells him, "Oh, I will take care of this." And instead, he sends that priest to a remote assignment. Criticism and cover-up go together, he says. And the part of cover-up is that criticism is eliminated. We live in a world that is very strange at times. We're living in a world that is full of corruption, that is full of cover-up. Nobody wants to hear the truth because they don't like it. And those who give the truth are being put down. And the more and more that they're put down, the less and less the truth is seen. We see that in our world. We see it in our church. And sadly, because we're seeing it in the church, we think it's okay. We think it's easy. We criticize someone, not because we criticize them because they're doing something that is wrong, but we criticize them to push them down because we're doing something wrong. That's the problem, isn't it? That's how we see it sometimes. People don't like being criticized. I don't, I'll be honest about it. But a true apostle should understand that criticism is not there to push them down, but there sometimes to guide them in the right direction. That's why we look at Jesus, for instance. He criticizes the religious leaders of the time. And why does he criticize them? He calls them hypocrites, a den of vipers even at some times. And they do not like it. They're going to put him down. They're going to kill him for it. And then you have Peter, and this is the part of the gospel that I like. Peter steps in and says, "Lord, that's not going to happen. I am not going to allow this to happen to you. I'm going to stamp out anybody who criticizes you." And Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan. You're thinking the very same way that the people who don't like me are thinking." In other words, instead of listening to what I'm telling you and acting upon it in the right way, Peter reacts in the wrong way. We do that all the time. We look at ideas of charity, for instance, at times, And we say, that person should not get charity, they're not a good person. Well, who gives us the right to turn around and say that to somebody? That person comes for help. What do? You try to help them, of course. You don't criticize them and tell them, get up off your lazy butt and do something, even though sometimes you may think that way. You don't tell them. You try to do your best in the righteous way. If someone comes to you and say they're having a problem with their marriage, you don't turn around and give out to them and say that they're not doing it right. Just do as you're told and you'll be fine. I get to see a woman will turn around and tell me, that's the right thing to do, Father. Or a man for that matter. Criticism does not do anything right at times. But to be overcritical, we can actually damage someone. Our idea of criticism is to uplift sometimes. And sometimes we point the finger, we give out, we let people know how we think, so that they may learn something from us. The documents of the church, for instance, a wonderful place to begin in many ways. The social documents of the church, what they teach us about how to live in a society, the way we should live in that society, and how we, the people of that community, should live in that society. Most of us have not even read the documents. Yet at the same time they will come before you and say, Father, I don't agree with what the church says. I love that. I don't agree, Father. Well, have you read the document? No, but I don't agree. How do you know what they say if you don't read the document? I just don't like the way you're saying it, Father. All right. So it says I'm wrong and not the document. That's possible, by the way. Sometimes I do say things I'm not supposed to say. And sometimes I would say something that may hurt or offend someone, because I may say it in a way that they don't like. Thanks be to God, you don't have crucifixion in this country. Because if that is happening, there'd be many a person sitting on a cross somewhere in the hills in East Texas, at least anyway. But our duties is to be understanding. When Jesus taught the disciples, he taught them to be understanding so that they can actually teach others to be understanding. That's the whole idea of what we're doing in today's world. We're living in a world which doesn't want that understanding. It doesn't want you to think in a group of people. It wants you to think for yourself, which is nice, by the way. It's a good idea. Works really well if you're living out in the middle of the desert on your own. Then you have to think for yourself. But they don't want you to think as a collective. Oh, we can't have you doing that. All our systems, everything that we have, is set up in such a way that a person becomes individualized. And therefore, you think for yourself. Descartes' understanding of life. I think, therefore I am. Nothing else matters. What a wonderful world that would be. Everybody for themselves. Just imagine what life would be like without compassion. Because that's what that fosters, in a sense. Jesus Christ rebukes Peter. Not because he likes rebuking Peter, even though Peter sometimes deserves it. He rebukes him because Peter is leading his friends down the wrong path. Woe to those, he says, who change the rules of what it is to be Christ. Woe to those. Our duty and our love is to be righteous people. We are, most of us. So we must live our life with Christ in our hearts at all times, and to try to do our best to bring Christ to each and every person that we meet, and to stand up for our faith. We're not good at standing up for our faith. We're seen as pacifists in many ways. Oh, let them do what they want once it doesn't affect me. Your faith as a collective is a very strong faith. Stand up for it. Be like Christ. He knew that he was going to be killed for what he stood for. Would you be able to stand and say, I am willing to die for my faith? I'm willing to stand for my conviction. I'm not going to allow anybody to change my way, something that takes me away from my God. That's a good question, isn't it? I'm glad we don't have crucifixions. Mind you, there probably wouldn't be any, because most of us will walk away. Today I ask you to think, to ask yourself that simple question: where am I with Jesus Christ? Can I stand with Jesus Christ in crucifixion? Can I take up my cross every day and stand for truth and justice and understanding and love, and do it without a criticism in my heart? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.